This final section is a prayer. It's a prayer that's offered on the basis of all that Paul has already established thus far in the letter. So before we get into it, let's recap the truths and the instructions Paul has already given us. First of all, God's ultimate purpose is to reunify all things under Christ. We read that in the first chapter, verse 10. And this, of course, is the source of our mission of the church, which is stated in the BCP. What is the mission of the church? The mission of the church is to restore all people to unity with God and each other in Christ. Well, with that named as God's plan, Paul then fleshes out what that means for the church. And of course, it means working toward unity in the church, not because the Jews and the Gentiles of his day found each other's customs easy to accept, or their ideas about food or dress compatible, and not even on natural affinity, but because of a costly gift of grace. In chapter 2, you remember he talks about the flesh of Jesus breaking down the dividing wall of hostility and making Jews and Gentiles into one body. Unity established by Jesus on the cross. And he goes on to say that the peculiarity of that reconciliation of races, Jew and Gentile, being made one, is so wildly unexpected and so marvelous that it displays the secret wisdom of God, or as the ESV translates it, so that through the church, that place where these two races are reconciled, the wisdom of God in all its rich variety might be made known to the rulers and authorities in the heavenly places. Well, of course, that is worth reflecting on. That racial reconciliation is named by Paul as a display of the wisdom of God, of something of eternal value, and especially in our North American context. Could our devotion to racial reconciliation display the wisdom of God's plan from the beginning? How does the flesh of Jesus knit races together in the church today? And what might that look like here and in heaven? God's purpose is to unify all things under Jesus. And Paul says it has been physically accomplished through Jesus, his blood and flesh. But, well, we all know that even in the church, there's division. It's along racial lines, theological lines, political lines, whether you lift up your hands or not lines. And we realize we live in an already not yet reality. Now, in our present time, spiritual powers continue to assault humans and cause division and disregard for God's loving law. What are these spiritual powers that Paul talks about? Well, the Bible presents personal demonic beings, spirits that have rebelled against God. Walter Wink talks about massive institutional and systemic realities that dominate our world and this distorted spirituality at their heart. He sees it more sort of politically incarnated, this idea of principalities and powers. But no matter how we understand them, the term powers alerts us to forces of evil beyond our individual sinful acts. And the important thing is to know how to resist these powers. Ephesians names 3 ways that the forces of evil are overcome. First, by Jesus being raised from the dead and seated at the right hand of God in power. Second, by the moral efforts of Christians. Yes, we play a part. Remember verse 1 in chapter 4, be humble, bearing with one another in love. That plays a part in standing against the forces of evil. And finally, by spiritual warfare, and that is by using the spiritual weapons that we have been given to stand firm in faith and resist the power of the enemy. And this prayer, of course, is all about this third way. We're instructed that our strength is from the Lord. The weapons of the Spirit have nothing to do with the usual weapons of worldly domination. So while we're reading about human weapons, we are learning about heavenly ones of far greater power. The weapons of God's truth, of righteousness. You know, that part that we play in not making a way for the enemy and not making a scandal that allows the enemy to prevail. We think of the dreadful effect of the scandals that we've read about, not just in the Catholic Church, in all churches. And what a dent that puts in the proclamation of God's power. Weapons of the Spirit, of righteousness, the gospel of peace, of faith, of salvation, of your salvation that God worked for you, of prayer, of the Word of God. And Paul wasn't the first one to think about this idea of weapons of the Spirit. Isaiah spoke about the Messiah who would strike with the rod of his mouth. Righteousness and faithfulness are the belt about his loins. Isaiah 59. When we clothe ourselves in the Lord's power, we'll be able to stand. That's an important word. Paul uses it 3 times. Remember that the Roman battle lines depended on the soldiers not breaking ranks and creating a gap that the enemy could breach. Standing, remaining in formation in the battle is of utmost importance. And when Paul tells us that we must equip ourselves to stand, it's a wake-up call. But Christian life is not a walk in the park. It's a life animated by joy, yes, but also a life that requires active resistance and commitment to be prepared to stand in the face of opposition. Notice that the Word of God is one of our weapons. Be humble, bearing with one another in love. That's a weapon of the Spirit. You take that out, bear with one another in love. That is a weapon. Jesus relied on the Word of God to fight Satan in the wilderness, knowing the Word of God by heart. That is preparation for battle. God's purpose, which He set forth in Christ, is to unite all things in Him. That is a weapon of the Spirit, which dismantles the divisive forces that say that we're doomed to tribalism forever in our country, in our world. No, that's not what the Word of God says. Notice also that Paul is asking for corporate prayer, prayer for yourself and for all the saints. Those ranks that we imagine in the Roman army of all standing side by side in order to prevail against the forces of darkness. And then finally, we have this wonderful closing statement. So that you may know how I am and what I'm doing, Tychicus, the beloved brother and faithful minister in the Lord, will tell you everything. I have sent him to you for this purpose, that you may know how we are, and that he may encourage your hearts. You see, if we were wondering what God's purpose was, it is relationship, 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 relationship with God, relationship in our homes, relationship in our church, reconciled relationship between races. That is God's desire, and that's why Paul, of course, even roots the sending of his message in a relationship with this person who has a name, Tychicus, who's not only just going to be a mailman, he's going to report on how Paul is going, how he's doing relationship. I pray that you are truly blessed as you discuss this passage today, as you perhaps even learn by heart this prayer of equipping ourselves for battle.